What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another tier list. So this tier list is going to be a little bit different from my usual ones. Usually I have like amazing all the way through booty, and this time I'm going to change it up. This is going to be ranking the Rocky and Creed movies, all the fighters we've seen from the greatest to the least greatest. I was originally requested to do this video all the way back in 2018, and I initially saved the comment and I just cannot find it. So if I find it, I'm going to give that person a shout out, even though I don't know if they even follow this new channel or not. But hey, shout out to you, whoever you were. But if you're new to the channel, I actually do a tier list every single week. So if you have any cool suggestions for a future tier list, let me know in the comments below. And if I use your suggestion, I'll give you a shout out in that video. Now, before we actually begin the tier list, let's take a look at this first. So as you can see, it's a little bit different from what I usually do. So the top I have best, the second I have second best, and then I have gold tier, I have silver tier, and I have bronze tier. But I do want to state bronze tier doesn't mean worst or like the weakest. It just means he's the least powerful when we take all things into consideration. So let me just kind of talk about that for a second. So each one of these ranks are going to be based off of like the character's overall fighting style, you know, their power, their endurance. So pretty much taking all the different aspects of each character and kind of just combining them, and we're seeing who is the very best, who has the highest power level out of all of the Rocky movies. Let's do this. Okay, so looking at our contenders, you'll notice there's a bunch of Rockies on here. And the reason why I put them on here is because Rocky in every single movie is at a different tier level. We're going to be going over where exactly they go, but Rocky and his villains are always at a different tier level. You may also notice that I have Apollo Creed from the first two movies as one character because he's effectively the same amount of strength. He trained a little bit for the Rocky fight in the second one, but ultimately he's already kind of past his prime. They say that in the actual movie, and then we find out later in the fourth one that, yeah, he really was past his prime. And that's why I didn't put him in here again. Because ultimately, the strongest we've seen Apollo out of all the movies was in Rocky 2. Now, this is, as I mentioned, a little bit beyond Apollo Creed's prime. Like, when we see him in Rocky 2, at his prime of which we've seen him, he's already past his true prime. And Sylvester Stallone wrote Apollo Creed to effectively be like the Muhammad Ali, like the greatest boxer we personally know in real life. He's supposed to be that character in a way. So we could maybe put prime Apollo Creed somewhere like in the best category, or what's the best we can see so far. He's definitely a gold tier. We'll see what this Apollo Creed does when we get to him. But with that said, let us begin. So we're starting off with Rocky, the very first Rocky. And the prime of which we've seen him in this movie, he definitely picked it up by the end. But it's very hard to say that Rocky is necessarily anywhere good of a boxer. The only reason he's able to keep up with Apollo Creed is because he's got an iron jaw. You know what I mean? He can take some hits. In real life, his brain would be mush. But Rocky got some hits on him. But I'm going to say this. I think out of all these fighters here, Rocky from the first movie and Apollo Creed being cocky and already kind of not really training for the fight and overly being somewhat past his prime at this point, he wasn't expecting for Rocky to be able to kick it up. So I'll give this thing to Rocky. You know, Rocky can go the distance. We know that's the truth. That's the whole moral of the story. We know Rocky can go the distance, but, you know, Rocky is also very good at surprising people. And when someone is underestimated and someone's cocky, you know, it can just really come together and end in someone's favor. So I'm going to say this. I'm going to put Rocky in bronze. I'd say he's probably near the top tier of bronze. There's only one or two people that are actually going to go in the bronze tier. I think the most are going to go in silver, and then actually the majority will probably be in the gold tier. I'm going to put Rocky in bronze. I think this is a good starting point for Rock. Like I said, bronze tier is not bad fighting. You know, this isn't like really crappy fighters. You know, bronze tier is still really good professional fighter. But as we see later, Rocky definitely just evolves as the movies go on, and his character gets better, and he trains more, and he gets more buff, and just stronger, and just a better fighter overall. Next, we're going to do Apollo Creed. So, like I mentioned in the beginning, Apollo Creed does train a bit in Rocky 2. But by this point, he is already kind of past his prime. And I've said this before, but Rocky 1 and Rocky 2, they're effectively just one big movie. Like, Rocky 1 is part 1, and Rocky 2 is part 2 of the same movie. And then, like, Rocky 3 is more of, like, the second movie in the franchise. But I think what we see from Apollo at this point, I'm going to put him in gold tier. See, the thing about gold tier and bronze tier is that even a fighter in bronze tier could still technically beat a gold tier fighter. It's just less of a chance to do that. So I'm going to put Apollo up in the gold tier for right now. Maybe that will change, but I'm going to put him there. So then we got Rocky from Rocky 2. You know, Rocky 1 was him testing to see if he could even do it. And when he realized he could, he really just started hammering in his training and getting better and faster and stronger. Still, even though Rocky wins this fight, Creed is a little bit past his prime, and obviously, while he trained harder, he also wasn't, I wouldn't say he was going necessarily 100% the whole time, and Rocky was just ultimately the better fighter that day. I'm going to say this, Apollo Creed and Rocky, although Rocky beats Apollo Creed in the second movie, I do think Apollo Creed was the overall stronger, more powerful fighter. But Rocky got up first. You know, that's the way it is. So while Rocky won, I'm going to say this. I think Rocky is a silver fighter by the second movie. I don't think he is gold yet. Very close, but not there yet. But I will say this. We're going to the Rocky 3 now. Rocky 3, with the training of Apollo, I actually think that Rocky is maybe just like a little bit better than Apollo Creed by the time after he gets trained by both Apollo and he has Mickey's training beforehand. You know, he's got the training of both the heroes, so I think that's very important. He goes top gold tier for sure. I think he's up there. He's great. Now, if we're going beginning of Rocky 3, I'd probably put him maybe behind Apollo, but by the end for sure, when he's taken on Clubber, he's better than Apollo is at that point, in my opinion. Next one. We got Clubber. So Clubber Lang he's a vicious fighter. You know, I think they actually, when Rocky made him, he was going off of Mike Tyson. If that's correct, I might be wrong with this, but kind of like this, like angry up and comer, just this tank. You know, that's what Clubber is. But Clubber is also one of those people that he puts 100% in those first 2 rounds, and then by the 3rd round, he is just like gassed. He's done. And super strong, but just gassed by the end. So I'm going to put Clubber probably a little bit behind Apollo here. I think he's definitely a gold tier, but I do think that Rocky 2 Apollo could have beat Clubber. Clubber would be stronger, but we know that Apollo, he's probably the best fighter in the entire franchise. Like, if we're talking like battle, strategically speaking, Apollo is the better fighter. So although Clubber would be stronger than Apollo would be able to see what Clubber's doing and just gas him out. You know, I definitely think he'd be able to outsmart him in the fight. And a lot of the ways, doesn't matter how strong a fighter is, if one fighter is smarter, usually the smarter fighter can win. And I think that's an example of what it is. I would understand an argument if you think Clubber could beat Apollo. I think that if Clubber can break through Apollo's defenses, then Clubber would win. But Apollo's got enough reach, enough speed, and enough battle awareness, like I said. I think he could beat Clubber. So I'm going to put Clubber behind Apollo, still in gold tier, but right about there. Then we come to Rocky and Rocky 4. I think, as far as, in my opinion anyways, the strongest fighter we've seen out of the entire franchise, that includes Creed, that includes all the Rockies, is Rocky from Rocky 4. I think he has all of the speed and strength he gained from the previous movies, plus now he has more of a redemption reasoning to really fuel the fire. And I think, I think the best fighter we in this franchise so far, in my personal opinion, is Rocky from Rocky 4. He's the strongest we've seen. He's the fastest we've seen. He takes the most hits. I think overall, if we're going over every single aspect, he is the ultimate fighter so far. Creed 3 comes out in a little bit, so maybe I'll redo this list when Creed 3 drops. I also kind of want to rank the movies again too, so if you want to see more Rocky stuff, let me know in the comments and make sure to subscribe for that. I'm going to be ranking the movies once Creed 3 drops soon. Now, with that said, there's only one person who could keep up with Rocky and Rocky 4, in my opinion, and that's Drago. So I think Drago from Rocky 4 is the second best fighter we've seen. I'll say this about Drago. He's like a Terminator, right? Like that's it. Like that's his thing. He's a Russian Terminator. um, he's great, powerful, fast. I'd say the only thing that maybe Rocky actually has on him by this point is that Rocky is better with battle awareness, right? So like I do think part of Rocky 4 was more of like while Rocky was training for the fight, he was also trying to really learn like the extra elements that Apollo would try to teach him with like fighting and stuff. Like actually like, you know, defeat your opponent mentally before you defeat them physically. And that's why I'd put Rocky up here over Drago. Drago, while he does seem to be pretty smart. Like I said, we know he's strong. We know he has a better reach than Rocky. We know he has a really good fighting stance. What it is, I think ultimately, between these two fighters being the best we've seen, in Rocky 4, Rocky is nature. And Drago is nurture. If you know what I mean. Like, think about it. We saw Rocky come from humble beginnings and work and work and work to get to where he is. Where Drago had steroids, he had all this technology, he was effectively built to be this mega fighter. So while Rocky worked his butt off to get to where he was, Drago was given that power, right? So it's kind of like, it's an interesting concept, and I really think because of that reason, Rocky is the better fighter overall. So that's going to be the best and the second best. Let's figure out where we're going to put everybody else. Okay, now we have Rocky 5 Rocky. Now this is an interesting one because Rocky 5 begins like right when Rocky gets home from Rocky 4. And then there's like a small little time jump. But then like there isn't. Like his kid is like already like 5 years older than he was. So there's like this weird time jump in the movie, but we'll just ignore that. Ultimately what they're trying to sell is that Rocky though isn't as strong as he was in the fourth one, and he has the eye issue, so he starts to train someone else named Tommy Gunn. I think that Rocky in this movie, though, could still throw some hands. I actually think that by this point, Clubber would be able to beat Rocky in Rocky 5. Tommy's a lot like Clubber in a way, very strong, but mentally not there when it comes to battle. You know, he's just not. He can't compete with Rocky. He's been through too much. Ironically, Rocky's not the smartest guy, but at this point, Rocky knows his shit. You know what I mean? Like, Rocky's been through some shit. He knows his shit. So, yeah, Tommy's behind him for sure. Next one. Rocky from the 6th movie. I would probably put Rocky from the 6th movie in... Let's do like a low silver. I think he's a low silver because he obviously got some hands still. You know what I mean? What really keeps him going in the fight is the stuff he learned from the past. Like, physically, he should get dominated by Dixon. But because he has all of that experience, and he's still got that iron jaw after all this time, I think the silver tier is a great spot for him. Low silver, not exactly bronze. I still actually think that older Rocky could probably beat up younger Rocky. That might just be me, but that's just like my perspective. Mostly because while younger Rocky can maybe take more hits than older Rocky can because, you know, he's older. Older Rocky just has so much more battle experience now compared to this younger one that he just get wiped. Yeah, I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna put him in silver. Maybe that'll change, but for right now I think it looks good. Next, Mason Dixon. I would actually probably put Mason like a little bit low silver, maybe. I don't know, because here's the thing. Mason did a lot like what Apollo did in the first movie. Like, he went into this fight not actually expecting anything. And then he starts to get his butt kicked. He's like, oh, wow, Rocky's actually putting up a fight. The one thing that Mason kind of has against him, compared to all the rest of these fighters we've seen, is that he's like the realest true boxer. like if they were going to have like, if you asked me which one of all of these characters were most like a real life boxer, it'd be Mason Dixon. So he's going up against these legends. You know, these guys are legends, and he's just kind of standard. So while I'd say like he's on the silver tier because you know, he kept up with old Rocky, and in a way I'd actually maybe say he's a little bit more powerful than, I'm gonna do that. He's a little bit more powerful older Rocky, but I think Rocky 2 Rocky would have completely wiped the floor with Mason. And the reason for that is because, like I said, he's a real character. But at this point, you know, Rocky and Rocky 2, he started getting, he wasn't there yet, by Rocky 3 he became like a superhero, but he was starting to get that superhero strength power and stuff. And I mean, honestly, if you think about it, it sounds funny, but like the characters and the timing of like the themes of these movies, I should say, you know, it just seems like Rocky 2 would just destroy Mason in one punch. So with that thought, it makes sense. But if we're going off of all the other things that I added on top of the different rankings as we went on, I'm gonna put Mason a little behind Rocky 2 in power level. Definitely a step down because, like I said, he is the realist. If we're going off of who I think would be the most realist boxer, I guess I'd probably put Mason at the top and then maybe put Conlan. What is his name? I actually haven't seen Creed 1 in a while, but I'd probably put Conlan up there more as well with him because those two actually are real life boxers and their scenes are filmed like real boxing matches. Yeah, so it's kind of not really fair for Mason, but I mean, that's Rocky. That's the way it goes. So let's jump into the Creed movies. We're going to Adonis. At the peak of power we've seen in the first one, I'm actually going to put him probably up in... I'd probably put him actually a little bit in front of Rocky and Rocky 2. Adonis, by the end of Creed, gets really good. But there's this massive span, though, into Creed 2, which we'll talk about then. But by the end of Creed 1, I do think Adonis could actually be able to beat Rocky and Rocky 2. It'd be a close one, but I definitely think he'd beat him. I think Adonis could definitely beat Mason Dixon, and he'd be able to beat older Rocky. So that's what I think. Next one, Conlan. I think Conlan is probably the highest silver tier. Yeah, he's the highest silver tier. There's no one above that silver tier. I think that Conlan is definitely the highest. I think he is really good. Obviously, he went into this fight not expecting much, and then he gave it his all, and he won the fight. And if the fight would have continued without a bell, Conlan would have eventually knocked out Adonis. He was just overall the more skilled, the more professional. He was the better boxer. With that said, though, we come to Adonis in Creed 2. And I think by this point, Adonis is probably right up here next to Rocky in 3. He has a massive jump from the first movie to the second movie, especially by the end. Like if we're comparing the end of Adonis from Creed 1 to Creed 2, it's not even comparison. He's a powerhouse by this point. He's just too good. The only reason why he wasn't able to really take on Drago as much was because Drago's training and because Drago's reach. Like his strength and reach is just really powerful. Now with that said, let's get to the final guy here. I'd actually put him overall power level wise. I'd maybe put him like, I want to put him a little bit above Adonis. Because here's the thing, Adonis won the fight. But there's a lot of extra elements that went into that fight. And it was really emotional for them both. And I just think Adonis is better at handling the emotional part of the fight. Where it really got to Drago. So I think that if we're talking about who would win that fight, Adonis was overall a better battle tactician like his father, which is a big thing of him, which puts him up there. But Viktor wasn't dumb either. You know what I mean? Viktor wasn't a clubber. You know, Viktor was not really his father, but like definitely better battle trained. Now the reason why I really like this fight is because, like I mentioned in Rocky 4, the battle between Rocky and Ivan was nature versus nurture. But this fight feels like nature versus nature. And I really just like that dynamic. The movie kind of sells it as if it's going to be the rematch of the century. But what it really is, it's just a bunch of extra emotions that go into it that make this fight happen. So yeah, I think Viktor is the greater fighter than Adonis, but I think we're going to see a new Adonis in this new Creed 3 that's going to really impress us. And hopefully not ruin the character. But yeah, overall, it's a solid matchup. So I understand if you put Adonis here, but I do think that Adonis is maybe like a little less powerful than Viktor, just a little bit. And the big thing for Adonis in this fight between the two of them, he's smaller. You know, Viktor's got the height, he's got the strength, but Adonis has more of the mental game. So it's a toss up in the air, and like it might be one of those things where like tomorrow I'll wake up and I might think this, But for right now, I do think that Viktor is the second strongest villain so far, and behind his father. Which, you know, it makes sense, you know. That works for the universe, and hopefully Creed 3 doesn't disappoint. So there you go, guys. That is my power level ranking for all of the Rocky fighters. What do you guys think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Where would you put people on this list? Do you think that I put Rocky from Rocky 1 too low? Do you think I put Rocky from Rocky 4 too high? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn notifications for more. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, if you have any cool suggestions for future tier lists, it doesn't just have to be a power level, it can be something else too. Let me know in the comments, and if I use your suggestion, I'll give you a shout out in that video. But thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next one. Peace.